Hi there, I'm Bernard Featherman. I'm the host of Business Today, and I'm delighted to be back, and we bring with us today a guest from our own community, an experienced lawyer, and of all things, about the word bankruptcy. Say hello to Jim Molleur.
Hi everyone. Hi Bernard.
Jim, tell us a little bit about your background first before we get into what you specialize in.
Well, I was born and brought up in Maine. I lived in Elliott for many years, went to college at Bowdoin College, and went to law school at the University of Maine, so I never left. And
that's good. I know you have good credentials. You went to Bowdoin. That's one of the finest schools in the country. Small schools, too.
It is. I'm not sure how I got in, but...
Oh, I'm sure that they make excuses for everybody. No, it's quite an exceptional place, and they have wonderful students graduating. And you've gone to University of Maine Law, which is a fine law school, and the only law school in Maine, by the way. So you're homegrown and born here to follow through. Well, tell us, Jim, what exactly are you doing now when you went in and started your own business in the early 1990s?
Well, when I got out of law school, I got a job in a local law firm. It was called Waterhouse, Carroll & Sear. It was one of the larger law firms in the Biddeford area, and I loved the area. So I've stayed in the Biddeford Saco area ever since. I bought a house here in 1980, and but around the year 2001, I broke off from that law firm and started to start my own business. And I did that because I decided at that particular point in my career, I've been practicing about 20 years, that the one type of law that I really enjoyed, that I thought I was helping people with, was bankruptcy law. I know it sounds odd.
No, not at all.
But it's very satisfying
right.
Because I have a background in economics. That was my degree in college, and so understanding people's finances came rather naturally. And people who file bankruptcy are usually they're in trouble with their finances. They don't understand them.
Right.
So when I decided to just focus on that area of law, it seemed most sensible to do it just by opening my own office.
Well, that makes sense. I went to law school too, you know, but I went into business. And my son is a lawyer, and he married a woman who went to MIT, got her master's degree, then was finishing up her doctorate in engineering. And she decided to go to law school like my son did. And she turned out to be a patent lawyer. And that is a specialty, just like you're working on bankruptcy. It's a niche type of situation where people really know what to do. Explain to me some of the things that happen when someone goes where it's pretty close to a bankruptcy and comes to use your services.
Well, whether it's an individual or a small business, they have usually gotten behind on their bills. For individuals, it could be because of a loss of a job or an illness, or some other calamity that hit them financially, and so debt piles up, medical bills, credit card bills. Credit cards are like the middle class safety net, aren't they? And so people will use those with the hope that they can get better, that they can dig themselves out of this hole, but eventually they just find they can't dig themselves out. And so, and then they start missing house payments, and so so their house might be in foreclosure, and that's when they generally come in to see us to see if there's some way of maybe saving their home, saving a car, getting rid of the bills so that they can start fresh, and so those are the folks we usually end up seeing.
Well, what can you do for somebody who's so close to bankruptcy before they go into bankruptcy?
Well, sometimes you can try to settle debts with credit card companies or medical providers. The problem there is that, and people who are in financial trouble, they get these offers all the time from the credit card companies of settling for 20 cents in the dollar or 50 cents in the dollar. So sometimes, for some people, that's a good option, but it's not as good as a lot of folks think, because whatever they don't pay of that bill, whatever is written off by the credit card company, the people will then receive a 1099 form, which is like a cancellation of debt income is what it's called. And that becomes a tax debt in the future, and it's a real problem for them.
Well, there are some people that settle with people, and they pay them even though the time is over for a debt. And once they make a payment on it, if it's over, say, 2 or 3 years, and someone comes back and say, you owe me $10,000, once you pay any part of that, then you're subject to the rest of the debt.
You know, that's exactly right. And the credit card companies, the collection agencies are very clever about that. A lot of people think, oh, the debt's too old, they can't collect from me. But they'll forget that a few years back they might have sent them $10 or $15 or something. And the moment they do that, the whole new 6-year statute of limitations starts running again. So sometimes these debts, even though they're very, very old, they can come back to life.
Well, that's true. Well, let me ask you something, Jim. What type of bankruptcies are there? There must be several different types to look at.
Well, there are, and the most common type is called Chapter 7. It's a liquidation type bankruptcy. That's what most people want to do if they file bankruptcy, because it's very fast. It's over within about 3.5 months from start to finish. So it's great to get rid of medical bills or credit card bills, or if heaven forbid their home was foreclosed and they left the home and there's a big deficiency balance. A Chapter 7 can easily get rid of those kinds of debts. But that's not for everyone, because if someone's trying to save a house from foreclosure or save a car from repossession, or they have a lot of tax debt that they can't get rid of in a Chapter 7, those folks will often turn to Chapter 13. Chapter 13 is a 3 to 5 year repayment plan bankruptcy. A very, very different concept, but what people use that payment plan for is to get caught up on those past due bills that they can't get rid of in a Chapter 7, pay a little bit of money towards the bills that they can, what we call discharge, or get rid of, and they end up saving property that they otherwise would lose. And we do lots of Chapter 13s. I think my office now has almost 600 active Chapter 13 cases. There are about 1,100 in the state of Maine total, and we have probably more than half of them now. Chapter 13 is a very unique type of bankruptcy. It's very creative. It can be changed as people go, as their circumstances change. So we try to use that as often as we can, because it provides the most flexibility.
Well, then, if somebody comes to you and has a problem, you can look it over very closely and make suggestions to them on what course of action they should take for their specific situation.
Exactly, and that's what we try to do, because each situation is unique. You know, it's interesting, Bernard. We'll have folks come in and they'll tell us stories about, oh, my cousin filed bankruptcy, or a friend of mine said that he or she did this or that. But then as we go through their situation and I give them different advice, they'll say, well, why can't I do what my cousin did? And it's like, well, because your situation is just a little different. And sometimes it's just like one little fact can be different, and it changes the whole analysis. Another feature that causes people to do Chapter 13s is if they're higher income. Now, we don't see a lot of higher income people in our area, but they're out there and they get in financial trouble too, and those folks almost are required to do Chapter 13 to pay something back to their creditors over time.
Sometimes they won't let them get out of 13 into a Chapter 7, I take it.
That's exactly right. Right, because if they, I mean, Congress back in 2005, they changed the bankruptcy laws. People probably still remember hearing about that a little bit. And the big change that Congress made, it wasn't to make it harder to file bankruptcy. What they were trying to do is to get the higher income folks who could probably pay something back to their creditors, to force them to use Chapter 13 to do just that, to not just walk away from their debt. If they have the ability to pay something back, they should, and which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
Can you save people from going through this? Like just recently, I wrote an article for the Journal Tribune on short sales from banks. Is there a difference? We're looking at a bankruptcy as a bankruptcy, no matter what you call it. But is there a way that it can be done where the rest of the charges are absolved by going through a procedure like that?
A short sale is a great idea for a couple of different reasons. One, if someone is going to give up their home and they know it, they're not worried about the deficiency because maybe it can be written off or waived through the short sale. Or they know they're going to be filing bankruptcy anyway, so they can get rid of the deficiency that way. But what they really want to do is get the title of the house out of their name into somebody else's name. I mean, bankruptcy doesn't help that process terribly well. In bankruptcy, someone can surrender their home to the bank.
They still are responsible, and their record shows it for a long time.
Right, and we're seeing situations now where banks are just refusing to take homes. They're just like not taking any action.
Well, it's expensive, first of all, and long fulling. If they make a short sale, I assume they can get it done in a couple of months. They have to go through Freddie Mae or Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac or Fannie Mae for approval. But in bankruptcies itself, we face concerns about citizens going through this. And you having over 600 cases right now, it's astronomical for our type of community. What do you suggest people do when they're in a situation like this, Jim?
Well, if they're in a situation like with a home that's in foreclosure, I mean, sometimes lenders will simply do a deed in lieu of foreclosure, where they'll accept the deed to the property back.
Right.
And lenders will do that because the foreclosure system that we have right now in the state of Maine, it's probably one of the longest foreclosure processes in the country. Oh. It takes well over a year now to complete.
Wow.
From the day they start to the day they finish. And in the middle of that is a mediation program that lenders and borrowers can use to try to do a loan modification instead of a foreclosure. But there are times where people just want to move on. They just want to let the house go. Right. And so sometimes a deed in lieu of foreclosure works. If that doesn't work, then a short sale really is the next best alternative for
right.
people, because the trick is, as we just said, is getting the title out of the homeowner's name. They've got to get rid of that, because once they make the decision to move on, and if they, for whatever reason, aren't living in the home anymore, right. They have to secure it, they have to winterize it. But what happens if someone slips and falls on their front steps? And what if they don't have insurance at that point? It becomes a huge problem. And so,
what age brackets, Jim, do people normally find themselves in? Can it run the full gauntlet, or is it specifically for the elderly people? Or what age brackets do you see a lot of this situation come up with bankruptcies?
You know, it runs the entire spectrum of life. We'll have kids coming out of college who have, besides student loans, which you can't get rid of in bankruptcy very easily, they may have run up a lot of credit card debt because they're living off their credit cards, or they had car loans and repossession. So we'll have very, very young people filing, you know, early, mid-20s. But we're finding a lot of older people, retired people. We have a client now who doesn't live in this immediate area because our practice kind of goes statewide.
Right.
But a woman in her 70s who was still trying to save her home, looking for a loan modification. We filed the Chapter 13 for her. And just recently, miracle of miracles, we got a loan modification for her.
Isn't that unbelievable?
That's going to allow her to save her home. Her home was in foreclosure.
Well, these are things that are services you can do with your law offices. And
right.
It's so important people know this, because I think when someone gets in trouble and a student, say, owes $35,000 or $40,000 and has no way to pay it back, has no job, there must be a solution for it. Also, when you find somebody who loses their job, then they lose their home, and then they're in serious trouble. What do you recommend people do when they reach this sort of point, Jim?
Well, I think, you know, knowledge is power, and they ought to make an appointment with my office or some other to kind of review what their options are, because it's really interesting that people are kind of mired in indecision. They can't make a decision because they don't have enough information. But if they can just get the information so they know what their choices are, then they can create like a new life plan. I mean, a lot of these folks, if they've lost the job, their home's about to be lost, you know, they're just depressed. I mean, a lot of folks, when they come in, they've been depressed for a long time because they don't know what to do. But once we kind of give them their options, you can start a game plan for them. Not everybody takes the game plan and runs with it.
Different strokes for different folks, I guess.
It's true.
We're facing something today which is unusual. You have people that are hardworking people that care about paying their bills, but they're a victim of losing a job, of costs where they had loans out and they couldn't pay it, as you said. Well, what's the difference in using your service against, say, a service that a law firm goes out, works an insurance claim against somebody, gets a third of their fee from the settlement? How do people work out your type of fee, Jim?
That's a great question. If people are filing bankruptcy, everyone would think, well, they have no money, so they can't file. And the answer is, you know, people always have some money, and we will often take payments, and once we're paid in full, then we'll file, and we can hold creditors off their back for 2, 3, 4, 5 months if we need to, while they're saving up to be able to file bankruptcy.
That's a big move too on behalf of your clients.
Well, it's, you know, if it looks like someone can be helped by our services, and we, you know, we stretch a little bit for the clients too, so that they can get some relief. Because, as I said, when folks come in to see us, they've, you know, they've exhausted in their minds every alternative. And you're right. You know, we're very lucky up here in Maine. People have a very good work ethic. People want to pay their bills, and that's a good thing. They should want to pay their bills. But it's sometimes they just can't, or they're faced with a choice. Yes, they can pay their bills and eat, you know, peanut butter and jelly for the next, you know, 5 years, or you know, if they have children, you know, maybe if they file bankruptcy and don't have to pay those bills, they can provide a better, you know, life for their children right now, and maybe that better head start helps their entire family out better in the future. So
your services really come in individualized, where it depends on what situation the client is in and their family is in. So if somebody has a specific problem of paying their bills, they come to you, explain it, and then you look at it and see if there's some sort of plan you can work out to help them along.
Yeah.
What does it do to their reputation when they go bankrupt?
Well, a lot of people are worried about that. They think that their name's going to show up in the newspaper. They think that they'll be, their friends and family will shun them. And I always tell people that, first of all, it does not show up in the newspaper unless you're a local celebrity.
Right.
Everything that gets filed with the bankruptcy court's public record, but their system is completely electronic. And so someone would need to hunt and dig, you know, hard to go and find that information. But I do tell people that if they're about to file, that imagine someone you don't like very well or doesn't like you will find out about it and tell people. And if you can come to peace with that and say, you know, it doesn't matter. It's okay because you're putting yourself and your family in a better place in the future, then it's fine.
Well, Jim, there's so many years until your record is cleaned up for credit again to buy. What do they normally run, about 7 years or?
Well, a bankruptcy can stay in your credit report for about 10 years.
10 years.
But so don't most other court records, and most other sort of negative notations on your credit report stay there a long time as well. So what we've discovered is that if people file bankruptcy within a couple of years of filing bankruptcy, even though the bankruptcy is still on the credit report,
right,
their credit can actually be much better a couple of years later, and they can qualify for home mortgages or car loans. Or
that's interesting, really.
Yeah, the trick is that people have to create good new credit after they file. And the sort of like the age-old way of making that happen, I mean, I've been doing this over 30 years, and it's the same advice I gave people 30 years ago.
No, it's true. Everything through experience. I was speaking to somebody who went through bankruptcy about 7 or 8 years ago. They were paying cash for everything that they bought. They watched what they bought because they didn't go out and excessively buy things that they did before. They really held tight to the vest. And if they prove that, their reputation comes back where they can get a loan, then it builds up for other loans as well. But we're really looking at what's going on today. And while this can happen 5 or 8 years out still, the things we need to have is if somebody runs into trouble financially now, they can come to you for advice. Even I assume that you sit down with people and speak to them and finally decide what it'll be as far as what course of action, the fees and all, Jim, am I right?
Right. My office has always had a practice of the initial consultation with the client is free. So we don't charge for that initial visit if people don't file. So they're coming in and getting hopefully good information, and it's not costing them a dime. So hopefully that's a good service to people. You know, I was going to say that we're very, very fortunate in the Biddeford-Saco area. Kind of follow up on that last point we were discussing, how do people restart their credit after bankruptcy? Yes. And the real trick is to become, you know, either a member at a local credit union or a local bank, and become a good depositor, have a savings account.
And pay their credits on time.
Pay them on time, and often if they build up their savings account a little bit, and then they ask the bank or credit union to take out a collateral loan against the savings account, the bank or credit union is normally willing to do that because they have the collateral, and they pay that back on time, and they do that a few times.
So they rebuild their credit then.
That's how they rebuild their credit. It's not that hard. And soon car loans then become easy, and then mortgages can. So people can restart their financial lives pretty quickly after bankruptcy if they try.
Well, that's good news to hear, because there are people out there that do need help, don't know where to turn. Let me ask you something, Jim. If somebody wants to get in touch with you and see your office and talk to them, where do they go and how do they do it?
Well, our main office, I have 2 offices. I have one in Biddeford, one in Portland, but our main office is in Biddeford, and folks can call us at our number is 283-3777.
Give me that one more time, because slowly.
Yeah, 283
right.
3777.
And ask for James Molleur.
Or they can ask for any of the attorneys in my office. I'm always happy to talk to people, and we're happy to set up an appointment with folks, and we love to see if we can help them. We also help small businesses that are in trouble too, Bernard. That I find, you know, particularly satisfying, because we have so many smaller businesses in the Biddeford-Saco area, some are struggling, and if we can help them find ways to sort of restructure themselves so they can become profitable again, that's wonderful, because that can save jobs.
That's important. I think you've really touched the point where we have small businesses here in our own community that need help. They may run into a financial bind, which is temporary. And hopefully this recession won't last forever. It's starting to come out now. And people in Maine are very frugal-minded. They're honorable and honest people. So on balance, you have a good stock of people to deal with. But it is important that they get advice from a knowledgeable source. And who is more knowledgeable but somebody who specializes in bankruptcy?
Well, thank you. I mean, we try very hard to find the right solution for each situation, and it's different for everybody. But you know, we take a lot of pride in making people see some light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, it's
That's good to know, James. And I'll tell you, if you want to get in touch with James Molleur and their law firm listed in your yellow pages, we also have their name and phone number on our film today. Call them, ask for advice. It's free on the consultation. And I'm sure if you've got somebody who specializes in bankruptcies and knows what to do, then they're the people you should see. Jim, I want to thank you very much for coming today. It's very enlightening to hear things that you've spoken about. It's a specialty field. Unfortunately, some people are going through it now. Some people may go it in the future. But since you just work on that end, you're the person almost like a surgeon that does nothing but hip replacement, heart operations. It's important that we know that we have in our own community someone who's very knowledgeable. I want to thank all of you for listening today to a very fine presentation by an outstanding law person in our own community that can help you. If there is any suggestions or recommendations or opinions you'd like to make, please send those to me, bernard@featherman.com. And we'll be happy to pass it on or respond to your inquiries in a short order. Thank you again for listening, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Goodbye now.